Cá estamos na Times Square para o episódio bônus da série Lendas do Mercado, que nessa primeira temporada apresentou algumas das principais gestoras internacionais, como a BlackRock, Goldman Sachs e o JP Morgan. Só que nesse vídeo não contaremos a história de nenhum banco de investimento. Em vez disso, optamos por trazer um conteúdo extra sobre o funcionamento do mercado financeiro, no caso, os pregões eletrônicos da Nasdaq. Mas antes, vale a pena falarmos sobre esse símbolo de Nova Iorque, que é um tanto caótico, mas representa a cultura e o estilo de vida americanos como nenhuma outra. Apelidada de encruzilhada do mundo, Crossroad of the World, a Times Square está no coração de Manhattan, na maior intersecção comercial de Nova Iorque, no cruzamento entre a Broadway e a 7ª Avenida, entre as ruas 42 e 47. Mas o bairro só recebeu esse nome a partir de 1904, quando o jornal The New York Times se mudou para o local, onde permaneceu até 1913. Antes, a Times Square tinha outro nome em homenagem ao distrito de carruagens de Londres, tendo inclusive sediado um centro comercial de cavalos puro sangue administrado pela família Vanderbilt, que citamos no episódio anterior. Lembra? Hoje, o centro comercial de cavalos dos Vanderbilt é o Winter Garden Theatre, teatro onde já foram encenadas peças como Mamma Mia, Cats, Beetlejuice, De Volta para o Futuro, Escola do Rock, e agora conta com uma adaptação do filme Boa Noite, Boa Sorte, encenada pelo George Clooney. Na década de 1920, graças aos avanços da eletricidade e à ampliação do transporte público nas redondezas, uma série de bares, restaurantes e teatros começaram a se instalar por aqui. No entanto, episódios como a Grande Depressão, após a quebra da Bolsa em 1929, e as guerras mundiais, tiveram um grande impacto no declínio da região, que passou a ser conhecida pela prostituição, tráfico de drogas, jogos de azar e criminalidade. A virada de chave se deu a partir da década de 1990, quando a economia de Nova Iorque começou a se recuperar e houve uma concentração de esforços dos poderes público e privado para a revitalização da ilha. Mas voltando ao período em que o The New York Times se estabeleceu aqui na região, apesar de ter ficado pouco tempo no local, o jornal deu início a uma tradição que se mantém até os dias de hoje, que é o espetáculo da contagem regressiva no Ano-Novo. No início, a celebração contava apenas com elementos de pirotecnia, mas após a proibição do uso de explosivos pelas autoridades, a sinalização foi substituída por uma gaiola feita de ferro, madeira e lâmpadas, até evoluir para as famosas esferas de cristal, com cores vibrantes. A bola da última virada de ano, por exemplo, tinha 4 metros de diâmetro, pesava mais de 5 toneladas e contava com cerca de 32 mil lâmpadas LED. Bom, atualmente mais de 350 mil pessoas passam diariamente aqui pela Times Square, área que responde por aproximadamente 10% da receita total da cidade. E agora nós vamos aqui do lado, que é onde fica a Nasdaq. Antes de tudo, vale a pena lembrar que Nova Iorque conta com 2 bolsas de valores, a NYSE, sobre a qual falamos no primeiro episódio da série, e a Nasdaq. A sua sigla significa Associação Nacional de Corretores de Títulos de Cotações Automáticas, e ela é considerada a 2ª principal bolsa de mercado de ações nos Estados Unidos, ficando atrás somente da NYSE em termos de capitalização. Com mais de 4 mil empresas listadas, conta com algumas das companhias mais valiosas de mercado, como Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, Meta e Nvidia. Apesar de ser muito conhecida como a bolsa de tecnologia, não há nenhuma limitação para que nomes de setores vistos como mais tradicionais também sejam listados por aqui. E outra curiosidade a seu respeito é que a Nasdaq foi a primeira bolsa de valores eletrônica do mundo, de modo que todas as suas negociações acontecem de forma online. Durante a nossa visita à sua sede, Brandon Tepper explicou um pouco mais sobre como são realizadas as operações por aqui no dia a dia.
We're here in Times Square, and it's definitely impossible not to see the Nasdaq's panel.
Yeah.
And so why did you choose Times Square?
I think the reason why we chose Times Square back when we did, which was like the late 90s, is we needed a venue that actually had exposure. If you think about how we work with our clients and partners, we have a great marketing and visibility platform. And the way we invest in our clients is to give them access to that platform and give them the visibility that they deserved so that they can grow. And when they grow, we'll grow. And so if you think about Times Square, the amount of people that are walking around here and driving through here, we thought it was the best exposure to sort of the, capital of the markets, but also the central point of the world. A lot happens in Times Square. There's always something new and unique, and that's why we chose. And actually, we were lucky because Wall Street, as we know, which is downtown, has actually moved and migrated to this area. So there are a lot of clients in walking distance from here. There's a lot of partners in walking distance, and it's central to what's happening in New York and the capital markets.
I think technology is actually in your veins, in Nasdaq's veins, since the foundation, because Nasdaq is not that old.
Yeah.
And you went for an electronic system when all the stock exchanges were actually having traditional physical trading floors.
Yeah.
So how does that happen, and how was it?
Sure. I think it starts with just having an innovative mindset and sort of going where our clients are going. And at the time, back in the 70s, there was actually a bunch of biotechnology companies, healthcare companies, that had really good ideas. They were innovative. They had no revenue, though. So they needed to raise capital, and they needed a place, a home to raise that capital. So Nasdaq was really built on that foundation. Our DNA from day one has been in let's invest in our clients and our partners and help them grow, similar to what we've done with Avenue. And so as those biotech companies were coming on board, we created the home for them. We created the first electronic stock exchange in the US, and we enabled them to raise capital. And guess what? Some of them failed, but a lot of them are some of the biggest healthcare companies in the world right now. And that's kind of how we think about our partners and clients. Let's invest early on the heels of those biotech companies raising capital and creating technology that is helping the healthcare industry even to this date. Intel came, and Google came, and Microsoft came, and that's kind of how we've been known as the technology venue, but it's actually a very diverse type of clientele that we deal with today. So it's always been in our DNA to use technology to help them grow, and as we've been building over time, everything we do is with a technology mindset.
So please tell us a little bit about you and your role here at Nasdaq.
Sure. I've actually been with Nasdaq for about 25 years. I'm not sure how that happened, but I just closed my eyes and now we're here. But it's been a great journey, and most importantly, what I do at Nasdaq today, a bit different when I started, I run the global data business. So the global data business is really, if you think about it, 3 different verticals. Okay. The first one is our exchange data, or our regulated data, and that's the 18 different markets that we own and operate around the world, in the US, in Canada, and in Europe. We also have the second vertical, which is what we call complementary or partner data. And that's everything from fundamentals to news to global earnings. Any firm that's building a mobile app or putting out a portal that needs all types of financial content, we supply that with our partners. And then the third leg is what we call alternative data. And that is a really exciting new area for us, where we look at more esoteric data that's not traditionally used in finance, and we help bring that information to bear for the buy side typically, but most importantly, investors that want information to help them make better investment decisions. So it's a new area, and we've got a global team. So we've got a North American and South American team. We've got a Europe and Middle East team, and we also have an APAC team. So we're global, our clients are global, and about 27 different countries we've got clients in. So we're growing and we're expanding geographies. Many years ago, there were the concept of looking at satellite images in parking lots of big stores. That was sort of the first foray into alternative data, but it's taken a little bit of a different approach. We work with insurance companies to kind of see specialty vehicles that are registered, so we can actually see how many motorcycles, how many RVs, how many boats are registered, and look at the trends in, are more people spending money on specialty vehicles? Is the economy doing well? We can do it by geography, we can do it by make and model of those vehicles. So that's an area where we actually help the buy side understand a little bit more as to where investors are spending their money and consumers are spending their money. We also have products that look at like consumer credit, and also see where are people spending money. In Europe specifically, around different countries, are people spending money on food, electronics? How are they spending that money, and what the size of those tickets are? It's all aggregated and anonymized, so we never really look at any individual information, but the trends are very important for investors.
Yeah, and that was my next question. When you said NASDAQ, it's not just about tech companies.
Yeah.
You do have a lot of other industries, right?
Absolutely. We have a lot of healthcare companies I mentioned. We have a lot of banking companies. We're not traditionally known for banking and finance, but we actually do have a ton of clients, regional banks around the world. And so it's important, just like we say to investors, diversify your portfolio. It's important for us to diversify our client set and also diversify our offerings, because it's not just technology, it's not just data. We have a wide array of offerings around the globe.
You said diversify, right?
Yes.
And that's something we keep saying to Brazilian investors, because they tend to invest all of their money in Brazil.
Yeah.
So what can you say to Brazilian investors about diversification?
What I can say is it's important to be educated, and it's important to learn, right? We're always constantly learning in our lives. I'm not going to give any suggestions on what to buy or sell, but I'm going to suggest that every investor needs to be armed and informed with information. Not just the great data that we serve, but information about how the markets work, what's trending now, what are areas of opportunity, what are safe investments for the long term. At the end of the day, the economies want investors there for the long term to help grow their individual wealth. So I think the key is learn, educate yourself. You have great platforms that help educate clients, such as Avenue. It's important to spend some time and read and think about what you might invest in using great information that's out there.
What's the biggest lesson you've learned in the business?
The biggest lesson I've learned is that the market goes up and down. And I think it's important as we think, and this could be applied to your personal life too, not everything is going to be up and to the right. And you have to think about things in long-term views. And it's not just, one day going down isn't gonna crush the business, and one day going up isn't gonna make sure that our business is growing. I think it's important to be level set and to understand you're gonna have great days and you're gonna have bad days. Hopefully you have a lot more great days than bad days. And that's kind of how, I think about not only life, business, but the market's a great indicator of how days go.
Outro ponto que chama bastante a atenção é o fato da sua sede estar localizada exatamente aqui na Times Square. Afinal de contas, todas as negociações são realizadas eletronicamente. Então, o que acontece no endereço físico? Aproveitamos também essa posição única que a Nasdaq ocupa enquanto mediador e testemunha do mercado financeiro americano para conversar com o Brian Joyce sobre a economia global e também tendências globais.
what are your view of the market nowadays?
Yes, I mean, so Nasdaq is very optimistic about the market. We had a CIO, Chief Investment Officer, in here the other day, and I heard him describing the markets. This is somebody with more than 35 years of experience. He was describing the markets as one of the most exciting times in his career.
Wow.
And so we've just seen, with the evolution of technology, with data, Gen AI, blockchain. So there's just so much evolution taking place, and companies are having to adapt and innovate. Something that Nasdaq knows a lot about. When Nasdaq came to be in the 1970s, we were the first exchange to have all electronic trading, and so we were a disruptor in our industry. And a lot of the companies that are listed here on Nasdaq represent that characteristic of being innovative and being a disruptor. And so companies, are as Charles Darwin said many years ago, it's not the strongest that survive over the time, but it's those who can adapt the best.
Perfect.
And so that's what we think Nasdaq exemplifies and our clients exemplify.
Do you think the companies overall, they are optimistic with the market?
Yeah, I mean, right now, in the very recent, last couple of months, we've seen, an increased amount of volatility here in the U.S. markets. But if we take a little bit of a longer term perspective, say that over the prior 2 years, we just coming off 23 and 24, which were both more than 25% returns back-to-back years. We haven't seen that since the late 1990s. And we came into 2023 with many strategists across the street in the camp of expecting a recession here in the United States, given the rate hiking cycle that had commenced in 2022, which again was a fallout of what had happened during COVID, the vast amount of stimulus that was pumped into the markets, not just here in the U.S. but worldwide, which was certainly necessary, but the fallout from that was an inflation cycle which we hadn't seen since the 1970s.
What about the American investor? How would you describe them? Are they optimistic as well? Are they seeing this? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the American investor certainly has a lot of optimism. There's many different types of investors in the marketplace, and that's a great thing. So we have, big pension funds, endowments that have a very long-term perspective. They may be looking more for income with their investment objectives. We have certainly many other investors with longer-term perspectives that may be more focused on growth. And so I think growth is important to some, income is important to others. There's, if you're a more seasoned investor, in your later years, maybe a return of capital is more important to you, protecting what you already have versus, say, a return on capital. So, there's with the many different kinds of investors out there, with many different time frames. And so there's, on the shorter term scale, with a shorter term time frame, you have the retail investor, day traders, swing traders, you have arbitrage investors, you have market makers out there providing liquidity. So, but I think if you put a broad brush, if you wanted to put a broad brush across, what's the American investor looking for, I think they're looking for growth, I think they're looking for income, and as well as a preservation of capital. And to achieve that, a lot of what's important is to have a diversified investment portfolio.
What can you say about the importance of diversification, especially for Brazilian customers that they are very used to work with only fixed income and just coming to American market as well? We are in a nice time for fixed income, but still people know the importance of long-term investments and they keep investing in stocks. So that's not something that happens in Brazil. So what can you say to Brazilian investor when it comes to this scenario?
Yeah, I mean, diversification is always important. And so when we're looking at different asset classes, let's say equities to fixed income, here in the US, since the early 1980s when the interest rates were really high because we were coming off the 70s era when there was high inflation, and to combat that inflation, our central bank raised rates, and the overnight Fed funds rate I think was above 16, 18% or so. What then happened for the next 35 plus years into, say, the COVID lows, we saw rates trending lower. And so a popular investment strategy was what we call here in the US the 60-40 strategy. So when we went through those economic downturns and equities sold off and corrected, what provided stability, diversification, and improved performance and less volatility was the fixed income side of the portfolio. But that changed when in 2022, in response to the inflation we had here in the United States, and our central bank raised rates aggressively, well, when you raise rates, you're essentially lowering bond prices. And so the 60-40 strategy didn't work out well because the sharp rise higher in rates led to a downturn in equities. So bond prices going down when rates go up, as well as equities going down. And 2022 was a very difficult year for investors. So having better diversification, a portfolio that is less correlated between the different types of investments you have in that portfolio. You've seen gold, an increasingly popular asset class to have in a portfolio. If you look at the S&P 500, the 15 worst years in the S&P 500, gold was higher 12 out of those 15 times. So I guess my point is, what we're seeing now, the increased correlation between bond prices or fixed income and equities, and if they're both going to be turning lower, maybe one leading the other, something like gold or some other alternative asset that's less correlated is certainly important to have in the portfolio. And having diversification geographically, to different areas around the world will only improve that diversification and mitigate the volatility, which at the end of the day should improve your longer-term performance.
You mentioned the 60-40% strategy, and maybe it's not working anymore. Do you think that's something that's going to happen in the next few decades? Maybe people will forget this strategy and then go for more diversified portfolio?
I think it might be too early, or too strong a statement to say that strategy won't work anymore. I think maybe there's an adjustment that maybe some portfolio managers will make as far as how they want to distribute the percentage weightings of various asset classes. We've seen, the digital markets, and Bitcoin, things like that, enter the picture in the last 10 years or so. Really, it's become more accepted amongst the institutional investors just in the last 3 to 5 years, I would say. So I think we're really in the early stages of that. That's certainly because it's such a new asset class. It sees, significant gains, but also sees significant downturns. So that volatility is still very strong in the early years of that asset class. And so maybe for many investors out there that are seeking diversification and less volatility, that's probably going to have a smaller weighting. There are certainly other alternative assets out there that you could add to the portfolio, so you don't just have a strict 60-40 portfolio.
So what else do you see for the future of the global financial markets?
Just the impact of, Gen AI and technologies, companies having to evolve. Last month we had DeepSeek make an announcement, and we saw it had a very, immediate impact on what was going on in the semiconductor industry, and that's okay. There was a brief, correction that we saw with select names within that industry, some of which, in a short amount of time, within a couple of weeks, regained all of those declines. It's just a reflection of, the competition that will always be there. Companies, adapting to, and innovating with new technologies, and that's a good thing. I think that's something we have to look forward to. I think there's risks to look forward that we have coming down the pipeline as far as geopolitics go. We're certainly seeing a lot of that now, and so we'll just see how markets respond.
What piece of advice could you give to Brazilian investors?
I would say, investing in the markets, it's a good thing. It's for me, I've always had a longer term strategy with investing, dollar cost averaging, putting away a certain amount of dollars each month over a long period of time. There's always going to be bouts of volatility, cycles in uptrends, cycles in downtrends. It's hard to time those in the short term. But if you have a well-balanced portfolio, diversified by geography, by asset class, by sector, I think, in the long run, you'll do quite well.
Está chegando ao final a nossa primeira temporada da série Lendas do Mercado. Ao longo de 4 episódios, apresentamos algumas das principais gestoras internacionais, como a BlackRock, Goldman Sachs e o JP Morgan, além de contarmos com a participação do time da Nasdaq, que explicou como funcionam as negociações em uma das maiores bolsas de valores do mundo. E é claro que não poderíamos deixar de aproveitar a cidade de Nova Iorque, símbolo do capitalismo e onde a história dos Estados Unidos e do mercado financeiro é contada a cada rua, esquina, prédio ou monumento. Antes de me despedir, quero mostrar mais um dos meus lugares favoritos aqui em Manhattan. Saindo da Times Square, é só pegar a Broadway e ir até o final da avenida em direção ao norte da ilha. Lá você vai encontrar o charmoso Columbus Circle, rotatória construída em homenagem à chegada de Cristóvão Colombo às Américas, que também abriga um sofisticado centro comercial com lojas exclusivas e restaurantes premiados. Ali também tem uma das entradas principais para o Central Park, um dos maiores parques urbanos do mundo, repleto de obras de arte, atrações e espaços voltados para práticas esportivas, além daquele merecido descanso. Espero que você tenha gostado desse nosso tempo juntos. Muito obrigada pela companhia e até o próximo vídeo aqui no canal da Avenue.
Thank you.